Welcome back to Hunger Games Chronicles. I'm sorry for having not posted in the past few weeks, but I'm currently poking my head out from under mountains of worksheets that my school is giving me. I'm really sorry. You know how much I love writing these games. But due to this workload, the games will always come out late. And the games won't always come out late, but I guess you can expect that the 105th Hunger Games, the first quinquennial quell of the Reconstruction era, will be slightly delayed. The art credits go to the fabulous Andrew McLean, and you should check out the links in the description. When the games end, please don't leave because I have a Q&A in the end, and be warned, literary gore will follow. The 104th Games took place in the year 126. After a rather chaotic reaping in District 6, where she was knocked unconscious when the morphling addict boy, Tribute, Walker, fell on top of her, Azora Asimov, victor of the 103rd Hunger Games, arrived in District 5, where the grey-clad youths stared up at her with their blank eyes and slick hair. She had arrived early, however, and there were still about 5 minutes till the reaping was due to begin. She met with Mayor Greengrass and was taken on a small tour through a nuclear power plant, where Azora occasionally had to avoid several stray nuclear reactors, but she seemed to enjoy the tour anyways. With 1 minute remaining until the reaping was due to begin, Azora spoke to the mayor's husband, Hertz, before walking towards the stage and reaping her hand into the female reaping bowl. Alba Larson was announced as the female tribute of District 5, and a shrill wail was heard as the corresponding 18-year-old girl swore loudly in anger. She threw her bright hair over her shoulder and stubbornly glared at the cameras, but when a peacekeeper came up to take her to the stage, she marched ahead in front of him, which made Rubius Dalton joke that someone had woken up on the wrong side of bed. This young lady was practically unknown around the district, as she belonged to a family that lived in a run-down tenement near the isolation area known as the Drill Hole. She lived alone with her mother and 2 younger sisters after her father had been killed by a landmine in the nuclear power plant where he had worked to support the family. Alba marched onto the platform and called Azora a series of obscene words, which made Azora quickly slap her, and Alba remained silent. Azora mocked Alba's profanities, before angrily marching over to the male reaping bowl. She reached her hand in very deep and after a few seconds pulled out a name. She read out the name of 15-year-old Eddie Greengrass. As his name was called out, a thud was heard as Mayor Greengrass collapsed in her chair and her husband fainted onto the ground. A controversial murmur spread through the crowd as a group of boys tried to cover a tall and good-looking boy with slightly long brown hair which reached the middle of his neck and stunning light green eyes. Despite being the mayor's son and living in a beautiful mansion near the town square, Eddie did not like being addressed as the mayor's son and was one of the most elite students in his year. He had already earned a special scholarship to travel to Capital University to study astronomy, which was rare for a district citizen. Eddie rolled his eyes and nodded at the boys surrounding him. They walked back, as though they were his subordinates. Eddie walked up onto the stage whilst his mom begged Azora to choose another boy. Azora started to place her hand into the bowl, but Eddie told her to stop and his mom cried out for him not to sacrifice himself. Eddie glanced at Azora and told her not to, which made Mayor Greengrass kick a piece of heavy machinery on the platform. Although this did not achieve anything, and the mayor let out a burst of profanity as her toe began swelling. After the reaping ceremony had come to an end, Eddie and Alba were taken to the Building of Justice to say their goodbyes to their near and dear ones during the farewell period. Both of them were very upset and were trying to appear strong for their families, and after some consoling, they told their families they would bring back presents from the capital if they won. Eddie's mother had to douse her husband with icy water for him to wake up, and they walked into the room Eddie was sitting in, along with his older brother, Freddie. Eddie's parents asked him why he had not allowed Azora to choose another name. Eddie shook his head and replied that he would rather die than be responsible for another boy having to fight on his behalf in the games. Mayor Greengrass did not seem amused by this, and told him that he would still have survived. Alba had trouble even moving, due to her sisters clinging on her waist and telling her not to go. Alba glanced at her worried mother, before telling her to take care of her sisters if she did not make it home. Once she had made this announcement, she spoke to her sister Myrtle and told her not to worry about her older sister. Alba nodded at her mom as she was taken down to the train, but as soon as she was gone, her family burst into tears. Before the journey from District 5 to the capital began, Mayor Greengrass had allegedly given Lynette Laurier a copious amount of money to make sure Eddie survived the games. Lynette is alleged to have happily accepted the money, but soon told Mayor Greengrass that she wanted to make sure that Alba had a good chance of winning. As the journey began, Eddie sat down next to Alba, who was busy reading a book about solar power from the shelf. As Eddie asked her if she was okay, Alba snapped at him, saying that his mother had forced Zora to replace him with another tribute, whilst the mayor had done nothing of the kind for her. As Eddie tried to explain something to her, Zora shouted that it was not fair his mother was able to buy her son's way out of the reaping. As Eddie tried to calm Alba down, she pushed him and called him an obscene word. As he yelled at her, he said that he could not help that he was the mayor's son, and it was not his fault his mother was trying to protect him from death. As she continued shouting at him, he asked, "Honestly, brat, what is your problem?" She charged at him as he leapt backwards, shouting that he had not orchestrated her reaping. He opened the door of the carriage and fled into the dining room, before bumping into Lynette Laurier. Lynette raised her eyebrows and asked the pair what was wrong, with Alba shouting that her district partner was a spoilt brat, whilst Eddie shouted that she was blaming him for being born as the mayor's son. Lynette appeared to understand what was happening and sat both of them down. She explained to Alba that Eddie had stopped Zora from picking another male tribute, despite his life at stake, before telling Eddie that he had to understand why Alba was upset. Eddie marched over to the dining table and began eating a late breakfast of bacon and scrambled eggs, whilst glancing at an annoyed Alba. Lynette gathered the pair again and as they gave each other dirty looks, she told them how important it was for the tributes of the most intelligent district to work together with each other in the arena, but Eddie shook his head and continued eating. After a few hours, Eddie found a game called Monopoly in the cabinet and placed it on the table. As Lynette explained the rules to him, Eddie seemed happy to play and occasionally swore when he landed on Lynette's properties. After building hotels on 8 of his properties, he bankrupted Lynette. He cheered out and did a little victory dance, just as the train pulled into the capital. Eddie grinned at various surgically altered capital citizens who walked towards him, congratulating him for his bravery during the reaping. Several admirers asked him if they could touch his hair, and although he seemed uncomfortable, he agreed. Eddie was mainly asked questions about his family, with people asking him to tell his mother she was a good mentor. Eddie turned to Lynette, and she smiled slightly towards him, before watching as her supporters assured her that they would be sponsoring Eddie. Alba had to be forced off the train at gunpoint as she began wrestling with the peacekeeper and shouted obscenities at him. After a few more seconds of fighting, Lynette exasperatedly asked Alba to come down, but when she refused again, she had to be knocked unconscious by the barrel of the peacekeeper's gun. Her supporters cried out as she dropped to the ground and had to be dragged to the limousine by Lynette and Eddie. Halfway through the limousine ride, Alba woke up and called Lynette an obscene word. As Lynette and Eddie gave each other a worried look, Alba leapt out of her seat and began smashing the window of the limousine. As Eddie tried to pull her down, the peacekeepers in the car spun around and aimed their guns at Alba. Eddie shouted at her to stop, but she smashed the window open and jumped out. The peacekeepers swore and jumped out of the car as Alba began climbing another car and jumping from car to car to get to the other side of the street. Eddie shouted at Alba not to run any further, whilst the peacekeeper yelled, "Tribute on the run!" However, Alba quickly ran into a car and jumped back to avoid being hit, which gave the peacekeepers enough time to apprehend her. As soon as she was in the car, Lynette swore and pinned Alba to the ground before ranting about her stupidity. They finally entered the apartment and, still extremely furious about Alba trying to escape, Lynette quickly slapped her and pushed her onto the sofa. Lynette shouted angrily at Alba whilst Eddie watched nervously, yet as he tried to defend her actions, Lynette snapped at him and told him that Alba had screwed up her chances of victory before even the parade, and she would probably have her tracker detonated during the countdown. As Eddie winced at this outburst, Alba tried to apologize whilst Lynette refused to back down and continued shouting at Alba, telling her that she had probably ruined Eddie's chances of winning, and if that was the case, the mayor would make her family's life a living hell, and asked Alba if she wanted that to happen. Alba spat in Lynette's face and asked her if she really supported Mayor Jr. instead of her. Eddie finally lost his temper and attacked Alba, shouting that she was about to meet with an unfortunate accident if she continued like this. As he punched her in the arm, District 5 stylet, Jasper Shockiness, walked in and asked Lynette what all the commotion was. Lynette gave him a brief nod and Jasper immediately pulled out his design ideas. Lynette, Eddie, and even Alba agreed to be dressed in dark black costumes with blue stripes that would soon turn into light. Jasper appeared pleased that they had enjoyed his top idea and ran off to finish the designs with his team of stylists. As Jasper left, Eddie sat down and turned on the television. After skimming through the volunteering of the muscular Tide from 4 and his warrior-like district partner Oceania, he noticed the reaping for District 3 was about to begin, and so he switched the screen to that reaping instead. Azora Asimov was taken on a tour through the district and fidgeted with some of the buttons in the reaping platform. She was then taken to the reaping bowl and after a brief speech about how much she enjoyed being a victor, she reached her hand into the female reaping bowl. After pulling it out, she announced that 17-year-old Amber Marigold was the female tribute of District 3. A sob was heard, followed by a gulp as a short girl with slick black hair wiped away a tear from her eye as she stood up straighter. Priscilla appeared to enjoy a buttercream dress she was wearing, whilst Rubia frowned slightly. Alba gulped once more and with a brave nod, she walked towards the stage without having to be followed by a peacekeeper. Amber worked in server room A of the district, which specialized in running the machinery in the factories. She was known for being a cheerful girl around the district, and as expected by many, she did not cry any further. She walked up onto the stage and shook hands with Azora, before Azora walked to the male reaping bowl, grabbed a name, and announced 17-year-old Silico Ash as the male tribute of District 3. A loud groan was heard as a towering boy dressed in a yellow tunic pulled on his top and snarled as he marched towards the stage. Some of his close-cropped brown hair ruffled in the breeze, but Silico did not seem to care. As his yellow shoelaces got undone, he angrily bent down and tied them, before rolling his eyes and reaching the stage. Silico was a very intelligent and very arrogant software developer who worked in the same company which many former District 3 tributes had worked for. Silico rolled his eyes again and muttered under his breath as he and Amber were announced as the tributes of District 3. They did not seem to be familiar with each other, and simply nodded as they shook hands with each other. During the farewell period, Silico assured his young single father that he would make it back home. Silico had been conceived when his parents had been only 16, and his mother, Della, had been killed when he was 2 in the 93rd Hunger Games. He gave his father all the money in his pocket he had been saving up to buy an after-reaping snack, saying he had no need for it now. Amber hugged her siblings and told her brother, who worked in server room B, about how he may need to work in server room A if he died, as it paid more money each month to its workers. Amber's brother agreed, and although she was fighting back tears, she waited until her family had left before she burst into tears. During the train ride, the tributes were introduced to their mentor, Gif Schneider. As Gif walked in, Silico frowned in confusion and asked if Gif where Atomica Perez was. Gif whispered intently into Silico's ear and he gasped, muttering something about evil capital elites, whilst Gif told him to be quiet, pointing towards the peacekeepers and the cameras in the train carriage. Gif spoke about the upcoming week with Silico, who was furious at his reaping, and Amber, who did not speak and stared sullenly out of the window as the train passed the trees. Gif realized the tributes were not talking, and instead switched on the TV to show the reaping of District 4, and Silico and Amber stared blankly at the screen as Tide and Oceania were announced as their district's tributes. Gif introduced chess to Silico and Amber, and played with them. Silico and Amber were on the same team, and after 8 moves, Silico and Amber checkmated Gif. As he gaped in shock, Silico grinned and said he was a chess prodigy in his school and had won numerous championships. Gif congratulated him and Amber grinned at him. The train slowly moved into the capital and Silico yawned before asking for some lunch, as he had not eaten since before the reaping. Gif ordered some food for the pair, and Silico and Amber ate the roast chicken gleefully. As Gif asked them about their skills, Silico spoke about his job in glee, although Gif reprimanded him for his arrogance, which made Silico scowl. The train arrived in Snow Station and the District 3 tribute stepped off the train to cheers. As Silico's light green eyes blazed at the cameras, the crowd cheered and several young ladies ruffled his brown hair. As Silico rolled his eyes in annoyance, he silently charmed the audience with his smile and stroked his hair, whilst Amber appeared uncomfortable but nevertheless still waved and posed for pictures with the audience whilst Giff hobbled on his cane. The next evening, the tribute parade took place and the District 5 tributes pulled on their light-studded outfits. As Eddie tensed himself in anticipation for the parade, Lynette reminded Alba to behave or she would regret being born. This seemed to scare Alba enough to shut her mouth, and Jasper walked towards the pair. As he passed them red light-studded capes for them to wear, Lynette called them beautiful and complimented Eddie as he ruffled his hair. The District 3 tributes were dressed in dark black suits with a holographic sign saying their names floating around their necks. The pair grinned at each other and their mentor, whilst their elderly stylist Jurgen Cardew combed their hair. However, as Silico glanced behind, Tide grinned in a sinister manner at him, which appeared to scare him. However, as the tributes entered the avenue in their chariots, it began raining. This caused shouting from the couriers as Atticus and Gloria, both from one, swore in anger as the rain drenched their blonde hair, whilst Narcissus and Bellatrix, both from two, struggled in anger and shouted obscenities as the feathers on their scant golden outfits stuck to their sleeves. Silico and Amber nearly got electric shocks as the rain flickered away at the lights on their costumes. Eddie and Alba scowled as the lights went off on their costumes, ruining Jasper's idea. Their capes stuck to the bottom of their carriage and the horses yelped in annoyance at the train. As they galloped faster, Tide and Oceania, who had been naked in tangled togas, tried to cover their bodies from the rain. Behind them, Eddie sniggered, whilst the audience, who were holding umbrellas, shouted, "Mayor Boy!" at him. Meanwhile, Grist from 9 almost fell on his district partner in fear of the bright lights in the rain. As she shoved Grist away, the horses leapt into the air, throwing them both off their chariot. Tritica MacDonald and Drin Green, who had recently returned to Panem following his abduction by European rebels. See the file about this matter written by Suspicious Term 787 in the Reddit library. Shouted out and grabbed their tributes before marching back to the accommodation towers. Training began the next day and the tributes were all given jumpsuits to wear. They entered the training center and his master of training Casco Astriana explained the rules. Silico made a funny imitation of Narcissus stroking his hair, which made Eddie laugh. Silico smiled at him, although Eddie's laughter earned him a glare from training master Astriana. After the rules had been explained, Amber roamed the training center and stopped wandering around once she reached the electronics center. And after building an extremely large circuit, Amber saw Gloria walking over. As Amber frowned at her, Gloria grabbed the circuit and threw it at the wall, which caused it to break. As Amber gasped and spluttered, Atticus marched over to Gloria, yet before he could reach her, Casco slapped her and tasered her. Silico spent most of the time glancing around at the other tributes and saw Narcissus and Bellatrix bullying Grist, who at 13 was one of the youngest tributes this year apart from Flossie from 8. Silico scowled before noticing Gloria get tasered. He snarled and walked over to Amber before reminding her that he would let her stab Gloria in the arena. He then left and marched over to the survival station and began starting a fire. Meanwhile, Eddie stood still for a few minutes before trying his luck at the knife-throwing station. After throwing a few knives, Eddie saw Atticus approaching and slowly walked away. He walked towards the survival station and joined Silico before placing his fingers on his head and saying, "Doi, I'm from 2," which made Silico burst into laughter and caused Narcissus to roll his eyes. Silico asked Eddie what he wanted, and Eddie shrugged before tying some knots with Silico. After a few minutes, they decided to join Walker from 6 at the camouflage station and exchanged some conversation. Alba rolled her eyes and refused to move, which caused Training Master Astriana to scowl at her, and as she continued to refuse to move, he poked her with his taser, which caused her to fall to the ground at Bellatrix's feet. Bellatrix laughed and said, "Heard about your escape," and laughed. Narcissus walked over and Alba snarled, saying Bellatrix would not dare to say these things to her if Mr. Muscles was not there with her. This made Lynette shake her head, and Bellatrix told Narcissus to pin her face to the targets they fired arrows at in their accommodation apartment. On the second day of training, Amber continued working at the electronics station, but in a rare move considering his personality, Casco urged her to try her luck with a weapon. Amber shrugged and moved to the knife-throwing station, and after practicing with a trainer, he told her that she had only 64% accuracy at knife-throwing, which made her scout and instead joined Kane from 7 at the sword-fighting station, where they politely sparred, but Amber was narrowly beaten by Kane. Silico spent more time training with weapons on the second day, and he sparred with Kane after Amber had left the station. After this, Silico fired arrows at targets with Atticus, who appeared to be inspecting him. Atticus appeared tempted to ask Silico for an alliance, but after watching Tide slam a trident into a dummy, he decided to join Tide instead. Silico rolled his eyes before noticing Eddie and waving to him. Eddie threw knives and fired arrows alongside Gloria, before spending some time talking to Tide and asking about District 4. After Tide politely left him, Eddie noticed Silico waving at him and walked over. The boys spent some time talking before they were separated by the training staff, but Silico grinned at Eddie as he was marched towards the sword fighting station. Alba spent some time painting at the camouflage station before asking to go to the bathroom. However, suddenly a crash was heard and peacekeepers looked inside to see the window wide open and Alba getting ready to flee. A peacekeeper grabbed her by her collar and tossed her several feet back inside the training center, before all 3 present peacekeepers asked her if she wanted them to give orders for her family back in District 5 to be killed. For the assessment of tributes, it was Atticus, Gloria, Narcissus, and Bellatrix who all scored 11 after Superior's display of strength, whilst Tide and Oceania both scored a 10 after demonstrating their trident-wielding skills. Silico fired a few arrows and threw a few knives, before grabbing a spear and throwing it about 20 meters away. This impressed the game makers, who gave him a few nods of approval, and Silico built a large circuit and, to prove it worked, placed a finger on it, which gave him an electric shock. He eventually walked out with a decent score of 7. Amber walked in next and, like Silico, used her knowledge of electrical components to impress the game makers. As she noticed that they were getting bored, however, she performed an acrobatic routine around the entire center, which clearly made her dizzy. After this was done, she practiced her memory of poisonous plants on a computer, which earned her a score of 6. Eddie demonstrated his knife-throwing skills as well as some archery skills, before grabbing a sword and slicing it at dummies with them. The game makers nodded, but just then Eddie noticed an envelope with a District 5 seal on it tucked inside the pocket of head game maker Fred. He groaned, muttering something about his protective mother, before throwing some more knives and using a spear. He ended up with a score of 8, which made Lynette congratulate him. The moment Alba was placed inside the room, she shouted obscenities at game maker Friend and stuck her tongue out at him. She shouted at him the tributes were simply pawns, which made game maker Friend scoff. He told her to carry on, but she did not do anything and simply sat on the ground and crossed her arms. Once she had left, in order for Walker to enter, she ended up with a score of 2, which Rubia stated she did not deserve. The interviews took place the next night, and Atticus and Gloria spoke about their wishes to win the games this year in order to give their district a 2-year winning streak, while also speaking about their mentors Dollar Crusoe and Azora Asimov in a very enthusiastic manner. After they had finished, Narcissus and Bellatrix spoke about their honor to be representing the Dalton dynasty in the games, as they were both cousins. Silico was called on stage and he appeared pleased to see Priscilla and Rubius. He adjusted his tie on his yellow suit as he combed his brown hair, before sitting with the interviewers and making jokes. After answering a few more questions about what he would be expecting in the arena and his life back in District 3, Silico scowled and muttered that his boyfriend had recently broken up with him about a few weeks before the reaping, which made Priscilla click her tongue. Amber followed on Silico's heels, and as she slicked back her hair, she spoke about her romantic life back in District 3. As Priscilla asked for her boyfriend's name, she scowled and rolled her eyes, saying he had cheated on her with her younger sister a few months ago. As Priscilla scowled, Rubius asked if her boyfriend was the same boy who had recently been thrown out of a window and had survived in District 3 a few weeks ago, which made Amber laugh and say, "I think my throwing's good," which caused Rubius to fall out of his seat in fits of giggles and caused a controversial murmur in the crowd. After loud and conceited gloating from Titan Oceania, Eddie made his way to the stage and appeared to be nervous. However, he still looked handsome and flirted with Priscilla, although after some questions he confessed that Silico's confession had given him the confidence to admit that he was more attracted to men than women. Many capital women sighed, but the most handsome men, including President Rickles Snow, grinned, which appeared to scare Eddie slightly. Alba had to be pulled to the stage after she continually kicked the peacekeeper who was restraining her, and Priscilla and Rubius gave each other a worried gaze as Alba punched the peacekeeper in the mouth. This enraged the peacekeeper and he threw Alba, and she coincidentally landed in her seat. Whenever a question was asked, Alba would call the capital and President Snow obscene words, which made Rubius groan. Orange Shell, both from 12, appeared determined to win a victory for their district, and they acted like couriers when talking to Rubius and Priscilla. Finally, it was game maker Elias' friend's interview, and he surprised the audience by saying he would be leaving this year. As the audience gasped, Rubius and Priscilla told him that he had provided the capital with lots of entertainment the previous 3 years. However, Game Maker Friend replied that his oldest son had recently lost his left leg in a car crash a few days prior and he needed to take care of him. Surprisingly, no one attended the ball this year apart from the career tributes, whilst the other tributes simply discussed strategies with their mentors in their apartments and talked about their predictions for the arena. The next day, the tributes were taken to the arena. The hovercraft ride lasted about 1 hour before the tributes were placed in their holding rooms underneath the arena. Gift visited Silico, who was wearing a yellow hoodie and black shorts. Gift told Silico he could win the stink and congratulated him for his bravery, saying his mother would have been proud of him. As Gift's voice cracked, Silico said it was not his fault his mother had died, which made Gift whisper he was sorry. Gift visited Amber seconds later, and as she put on her hoodie, Gift told her he knew she had a chance of winning and embraced her with one hand as he hobbled on his cane. Gift told her to make him proud and she smiled at him, before tying the laces of her sneakers and walking into her tube and waving at Gift. Meanwhile, Eddie was visited by Lynette, who told him that he was one of her only mentees she had gotten close to. As Lynette told Eddie he needed to win and mentor District 5 tributes alongside her in following years, Eddie grinned and put on his grey hoodie, before hugging Lynette and telling her his mother had paid Game Maker Friend to give him a high training score. Lynette replied that she knew, but that he was going to be getting sponsor gifts sometime soon. As Lynette told him she was not visiting Alba, Eddie grinned before Lynette said she's trouble and led him into his tube. He smiled at her and she waved at him, saying, "See you soon," as his tube was lifted into the arena.